Hello, one and all. Back to the Mind's Eye Theater. If you give me one quick moment, I'm a one-man operation, so I'm just getting everything settled here on the back end. So, okay. Lycans and gentlemen, children of the night, nocturnals, night terrors, and all things that go bump in the night. Welcome to your monthly treatment of shock therapy. The doctor will see you now. Show me your woes, and I'll cure all that ails you. Consider me your night watchman for this evening's festivities here at the Mind's Eye Theater. I invite you to violate curfew along with me for this graveyard shift. I am your horror host Inkarnate for this sold-out show. Joining me is nobody. Traumadom couldn't make it, so I'm flying solo for tonight. I personally am ecstatic for this watch party. This was actually well ahead of schedule, just because though I knew that I was going to get around to watching this movie, here's the rub. So it turns out that this movie was returned to theaters in light of its 25th year anniversary. Now, again, I had this on the agenda to watch it, but for next month. When I heard that this was going to come back to regular theaters, I said, no. Yes, I said all that. Fact of the matter is, I am Inkarnate. I am he who dictates the watch parties. So, if a film is going to be celebrated for its anniversary, especially a quarter of a century, that is going to be the sole property of the Mind's Eye Theater, not the regular theater. So there, the regular theaters can busy themselves screening that crap Abigail that came out just last Friday. So, there actually just so happens to be another movie that's celebrating another anniversary tomorrow, but that's for later on in the stream. So, obviously, it's apparent what we have on for tonight's viewing displeasure. A couple of housekeeping items. Oh, first up is, I always like to do a little thing that I call film rating. So, let me pull that up now so that you fine people can see what it is that I'm referring to. There is a poll that I like to make, which I refer to as the totem poll, which is your official film rating for whatever creature presentation we're watching. So your options are as follows. Bottom of the Burial. This scene should look familiar. Shallow Grave. And my personal favorite, High Stakes. So those are your options. I will pull up the poll now for all of you to vote on. It should be obvious which selection that I'm going for. I absolutely love this movie. Yeah, I would have preferred for this film to have been, obviously to lean more in the direction of horror. But hey, I'm happy with what we got. So I'm giving this a high stakes rating on the totem pole. The totem pole is live, so I invite all of you fiends to check out on the YouTube stream, so that you can vote as well. I will be giving my thoughts periodically throughout this watch party, my reminders for all of you to vote in the totem poll as well. So a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. Let me see. So, naturally, I invite you to stream the film along with me. You can queue it up on, now this should be available on Peacock, but unfortunately streaming services don't know what the hell they're doing. Instead, you can find this on Tubi. Now, the reason why this is not a Tubi B movie is because I bought the 4K of The Mummy couple years back, and I already have the streaming code on Amazon Prime. So I won't be watching that version, the Tubi version with all the commercials with the rest of you schlubs. I know, I'm terrible. But hey, it costs to be the boss. Let me take care of a couple of housekeeping items. I will be providing timestamps throughout the watch party to make sure that your viewing experience is synced up with mine, as well as for the convenience of anyone joining who's casually late to my party. But let me just see one quick thing. Okay. So, okay, now I got it. So, this watch party is brought to you in partnership with Hotness TV. Since next week will begin the month of May, you can expect in the middle of the week, they will be dropping a new May edition of the magazine. And my editorial will be either a preview. I have to take a look. I'm not optimistic about any movie coming out in 2024. So tomorrow I will probably take a look to see what is coming out, because I mean, if it's just a bunch of crap that's coming out this summer in terms of horror fare, I don't want my editorial to just be a bunch of negative stuff, even though I am hysterical. So, if that's not the case, I'll just do a suggestion, a watch list of 5 or 6 movies that I would recommend for all of you fine folks to get your summer started the only way that you can, with horror movies. So, be on the lookout for that. Our sponsorships for this watch party are Samsung devices and Jabra headsets. That's another thing. So since we are in the season for discounts and summer sales, if you're in the market to get either Jabra headsets or Samsung devices, I would direct your attention to the links in the description of this video. It just helps out the channel tremendously. The Mind's Eye Theater has as an affiliate the upcoming documentary called Mental Health and Horror. So when that does release, I absolutely plan to do a watch party for it and a film review. Up top, you'll notice the PayPal link if you're of a mood to support the Mind's Eye Theater. I'll just consider it your pound of flesh. Additionally, Streamlabs, the platform that we stream these movies on, was nice enough to give us our own store, which is streamlabs.com/mindgamesinc/merch. You can find that link in the description. So we are coming to you live, streaming on Facebook, Twitch, YouTube, as well as Instagram. Instagram, welcome to the party. In the enduring battle between Inkarnate and the almighty algorithm, my fans are my strongest weapon. Therefore, I kindly ask you fine folks, get them likes up. Therefore, without further ado, we now offer you this creature presentation. And we are starting right now. Oh, the load screens. Can't stand it. I'm kidding. I can admit that not all of the special effects work, as you'll see once we start. They did not age well, let's just put it that way. The opening voiceover, you'll notice, that was actually originally intended to be read by Imhotep himself. However, director Stephen Sommers later realized that Imhotep wouldn't be able to speak English and gave the voiceover to Ardeth Bey instead. Derp. And let me just quickly check that. Yeah, as you can see, these special effects ain't much to write home about. Let me just quickly check that on the stream, the movie's audio is not coming in. And you can just hear my angelic voice. That sounds nice, right? I have to check the audio just because I always check the audio just as a precaution, just because YouTube is really finicky and annoying about that. So I think we're good. Yeah, it was originally planned. The opening would have the old black and white Universal logo that had been used at the beginning of The Mummy 1932, which would dissolve into the blazing desert sun. He later used that opening for Van Helsing, though the logo would turn into flame from a torch instead. And we all know how that movie ended up. So, with the exception of a loincloth, a few pieces of jewelry, and pasties, Patricia Velasquez here, who plays Anaxunamun, she was nude, except for body paint, which took 4 hours to apply. I mean, hey, if they had to save on the costume, that was money well spent. Am I right, fellas? For the television broadcast version of the film, a small bikini was painted onto Anaxunamun's body. Boo! Oh, just me sitting here all coy. Typical dame. I had a bug there. Just a mosquito, you know, Egypt and all. Ouchums. Well, damn. They're like, gee, should we help? Should we call somebody? Whoopsie. A small little detail that I overlooked. Some cast members actually thought that the movie was cursed when the film broke at the premiere. They actually did have an Egyptologist that was brought in to make sure that the ancient Egyptian that was spoken actually it was spoken accurately for the sake of the dialogue. For any history nerds, Imhotep, it actually was a real historical figure, but he wasn't the high priest of Pharaoh, Seti the First. He was actually the architect who developed the first pyramids in ancient Egypt. Most notably, the pyramid of Pharaoh Djoser at Saqqara around 2600 BC. So his ability was such that he was later said to have descended from the gods. His name means one who comes in peace, and as far as anyone knows, he was not despised as a villain as portrayed in the movie, but he was much more likely revered as the architect and physician that he actually was. Seti the First was a real pharaoh, but he ruled around, 1,300 years later, almost 1,300 years after Imhotep had died. Anaxunamun was an Egyptian princess who was the half-sister and wife of King Tut. She's like, that was a bad trip. Uh-oh. What a tease, right? Well, thanks for stopping by. She's like, damn it, my booty call interrupted. So this scene here where Imhotep is quote unquote mummified, although not really, it really freaked out the actor. He had to be in bandages for 4 hours just to film the scenes where he's wrapped and put in his tomb. Can't we talk about this? Four hours just for this. This one scene. You'd figure it would be like a bodysuit that he could just put on that's like pre-bandaged, you know what I mean? Uh-oh. So, the scarab's design was achieved by taking the worst traits of certain insects, like insect species, like pincers and movements, and combining them all to digitally recreate a variety of insect. Funny enough, despite the name, the title character was never mummified. His followers were, but he was subjected to a different kind of death. Oh yeah, check out them thighs. Oh god, it's a dog. That's a pretty badass opening. And what are we... Let's see. 7 minutes in. So the guy that played Imhotep, he understood the approach that the director was going for in his screenplay, but only agreed to take on the role of Imhotep if he could do it absolutely straight. You know, from Imhotep's point of view, this is a skewed version of Romeo and Juliet. Arming up, boys. So the Magi were originally... Oh, this was Oded Fehr's first big screen role. The Magi were originally supposed to be tattooed from head to toe, but Stephen Sommers vetoed it because he thought Oded Fehr was too good looking to be covered up. Pause, bruh. Speaking of casting, Brendan Fraser was cast due to the success of George of the Jungle, of all things. God, this guy's hysterical, Benny. The director also commented that he felt Fraser fit the Errol Flynn swashbuckling character he had envisioned perfectly. The actor understood that his character doesn't take himself too seriously, otherwise the audience can't go on that journey with him. So the crew could not shoot in Egypt because of the unstable political conditions. Get this, the production had the official support of the Moroccan army, and the cast members had kidnapping insurance taken out on them, a fact that Stephen Sommers disclosed to the cast only after shooting had finished. What a dick. To avoid dehydration in the scorching heat of the Sahara, the production's medical team created a drink that the cast and crew, that they had to consume it every 2 hours. Sandstorms were daily inconveniences, and they had to contend with snakes and spiders and scorpions. These were all major problems for the production, with many crew members having to be airlifted out after being bitten. Interestingly enough, despite this action scene, one of the unforeseen problems with shooting in the desert was that the sand would cause all the guns to jam. Can you imagine? The firing of the weapons would only be later added by industrial light and magic. I don't think so. Totally cut off, my friend. Well, I had a nice run. Get it? Because he was just running from them. Uh-oh. Get the hell out of here! Peekaboo. A little. Okay. Oh man, I'm safe. This was a good immediate callback to the previous scene. I don't know. Maybe it's because I didn't watch George of the Jungle that why I'm like I was completely bought into Brendan Fraser's performance here. That's pretty dope. Oh, looks like I got some fans. Better not press my luck. So the tattoos on Ardith Bey's forehead are the Egyptian hieroglyphs that spell underworld, and the ones on his cheek are the Egyptian hieroglyphs for the word truth. So all Magi men get these tattoos as part of the coming of age rite when they turn 16, of which the most important is the tattoo on the right wrist, which Rick O'Connell also has. That marks them as warriors of God. Other tattoos specific to Magi men are on their arms, forearms, hands, pectorals, shoulder blades, and beneath the navel. The tattoos on the nose and chin are no longer used since the time of Seti the First. Magi women only get the wrist tattoo when they come of age, but are not marked with any of the other symbols that are particular to men. If the Magi men and women alike, here we go. Sorry. If the Magi men and women alike show any sign of pain or cries during the tattooing process, it's considered that they have brought shame to their family. So, interestingly enough, the library disaster was done in one take. And it took an entire day to reshoot if a mistake had been made. Could you imagine that? And mind you, that this is all a practical effect. Oh, she's clumsy. And a woman, what else would you expect? So, with that bit of misogyny out of the way, when King Tut's tomb was found on November 4th, 1922, the person in charge was Howard Carter, who was employed and funded by George Herbert, the fifth Earl of Carnarvon. Carnarvon's daughter, Lady Evelyn Herbert, accompanied Carter to Egypt to view the discovery. Rachel Weisz's character is named Evelyn Carnahan. Originally, her character was meant to be Evelyn Carnarvon. She and her brother were to be the children of the cursed Lord Carnarvon. The only evidence of this left in the film is in the line where Evelyn tells O'Connell that her father was a very, very famous explorer. The Mummy novelization goes into a bit more detail of her backstory. Rachel Weisz actually, I found out, is not a big fan of horror films, but in her eyes, she didn't see this film as such. She said in an interview that it's hokum, a comic book world, end quote. Shun the non-believer. Not really too big of a surprise though, because Jamie Lee Curtis also isn't a big horror movie fan. But we'll forgive them just this once. What an idiot. This movie was very well casted, I must say. I'm better than a career, right? I realize that many women don't, they don't like to be typecast. They don't want to be the damsel in distress, but I feel like something that is missing in modern horror especially is like female characters that are like, how can I put it, relatable and memorable, like a Phoebe Cates from Gremlins. I think that that's something that's greatly missing because it's what made movies classics, far too often we our focus is on the how can I put it, not the femme fatale, the final girl. But then again, modern horror, and when I say modern horror, I would say for the last 30 years has focused too much on slasher movies. So obviously, we focus far too often on the tropes that go along with that. But she wouldn't be a final girl, even though there is a body count in this movie. But she's a second lead, and if you look at it, she is the explorer split of the Indiana Jones paradigm that they're going for with this film, whereas Brendan Fraser is obviously the adventurer. Oh, good heavens, look what was totally an accident. That couldn't possibly be blamed for. Happenstance, you see. Oh well, it was nice while it lasted. This guy was well acted as well, too. That's very intense. Oh, this is great. Interestingly, this prison scene was shot entirely at an apartment complex in Marrakesh. The prison warden here, God Hassan, is portrayed by Omid Jalili, who is British. He is a comedian who made his acting debut in this movie. God, I had a friend in high school that the only impression she could do was of this guy, and I felt bad because she thought it was like such a good impression, and I didn't want to break her little heart, but it wasn't. Okay, we hit the 20 mark now, the 20-minute mark now. Guys, if you could like the video no matter which platform you're watching on, and if you're on the YouTubes, I would direct your attention not just to the like button, but to the chat so you can vote what your film rating for this film is. It'll be at the top of the chat. Uh, and your options there are listed below on the poll. Yeah, he just got reacquainted with your familiar face. Every damn day. I love that. No. These two are very well, how can I put it? Rachel Weisz and Brendan Fraser, they're a very underrated horror couple now that I think about it. There aren't, I'd have to give that some thought. I don't think that there are, he had a very good time. God. Anyway, I don't think that there are many horror couples now that I think about it, but they play very well off of each other. They're very convincing. And they have film chemistry, which is not something you could say about a lot of actors nowadays. So stupid. Very lonely men. Nice knowing you. This scene. So Brendan Fraser nearly died during this scene. Rachel Weisz remembered, quote, he stopped breathing and he had to be resuscitated. Fraser did the hanging scene for real and passed out during the filming. According to him, Stephen Sommers' only direction was, look good, don't die, action. Like, stupid. Not only is everyone well cast, everybody like matters. You know what I mean? Like everybody has a role to play here. Now, obviously, I can't even say that anyone here is typecast. I mean, everybody plays their role well. They're convincing in their roles, certainly. Even Jonathan, there is a certain charm to him. Again, like I like many wish that this was leaned much more in the horror as opposed to the comedy, but it's not you do have to admit it's not bad comedy. Yes, yes. In fact, according to speaking about the horror and the humor, according to director Stephen Sommers, the hardest thing about the movie was the blend of humor and horror. He said, "I didn't set out to make a straight horror movie." Good line. Kind of reminds me of King Kong here, where you have the locals that are like infiltrating a boat. Interestingly enough, they are also going. He threw it right in front of her. They're targeting the damsel in distress. Hmm. They in the sequel they tried to make her much more like um Rick O'Connell, much more like Brendan Fraser, and she loses something, you know? Like she looks so like innocent here and how can I put it? Innocent and, you know, someone you know, the character that you want to defend and protect, you know what I mean? By making her, you know, the femme fatale or whatever, it is the character loses something. This line, what that line, "Think of my children," was actually ad-libbed by the actor. This guy was also a good comedic relief. Hell, oh. Oh God, his teeth. Uh-oh. Someone left some tracks. And by the way, how do you like my hair? Didn't even get a shot off. Ow. I forgot about that part. See what I mean? They play off of each other so well. Oopsie. Damn. So the director actually came up with that gag for Evelyn to save Rick from two gunshots, um, slightly before they've even filmed the scene. See, that's what I mean. Like she misses in the sequel to this. She loses that vulnerability to her. You gotta love the over the top fire. Yeah. So that line for him to wait here, that was added last minute also by Steven Summers. He realized that he didn't write how the warden was supposed to get off of the boat. Oh, Jesus. could, could that guy die any more horrendously? Jesus, he gets shot. Oh no, he is on fire. He gets a candle to a lit candle to the eye. Then he gets shot. He falls off a boat. The only thing he was missing was a friggin' piano falling on top of him. Oh, that's racist. So the white gown that Evelyn wore when the ship was attacked, it became transparent when it got wet. So she had to be digitally painted white during post-production so that the film could keep its PG-13 rating. Whoopsie. She knew what she was doing all along. She just wanted to compete with the Anaxunamun body paint at the beginning. Typical women, always so jealous of each other. I don't think I've ever ridden a camel before. I've always seen them at like petting zoos and such. They're actually not native to Egypt. When the Arabian migration happened in, I believe, the 6th century AD is when they were brought over. Oh. So, Stephen Summers had said that The Mummy, the original Mummy, was the one movie that scared him as a kid. He was only 8 when he saw it and wanted to recreate the things he liked about it on a bigger scale. I actually brought a relative uh, to a petting zoo a year and a half ago, and she was like mortified that camels spit. The Sahara is so big that the entire mainland United States could fit inside of it. I didn't know that until I did my own research into actually no, I've known that for quite a while. I wrote a story about rejuvenating like the dead sands. I wrote over a decade ago I wrote that story. And it's wild, like an entire desert can be that big. I love how it's night in 2 separate shades, depending on the character. My old buddies. It's also crazy, like the dramatic change in temperature in deserts. And that's any desert, because I've been in Arizona and there's been a buddy of mine told me that just the dramatic change in temperature between day and night, how frigid the nights can get. It's wild. I didn't believe him. God. I also kind of like this idea, like um, a hidden city. I do wish that they would have done a little bit more with that, but I mean, on the other hand, what can you do? Because it is a ruin. But I've always kind of liked that. Like it's only not only is it hidden, it's only visible. It's only visible at sunrise, which is kind of interesting. Because though hidden, there would need to be a way of actually finding it. What a dick. Goofy looking smile. Okay, where are we at? God. The sounds that camels make. It's crazy that even in that landscape that you can have such a hefty amount of insects like and snakes. It's impossible to think that anything out there can survive. Okay, we're gonna hit the 40-minute mark in three, two, one, now. Guys, if you could please hit the like button on whichever platform you're watching this on, and if you could if you happen to be watching on YouTube, please take uh, to the chat to vote in the totem poll what your official film rating is. He punches this guy. That'd be funny. As much as I do like this movie, it's kind of crazy to me that no one has ever adapted the story of the 1922 opening of King Tut's tomb. You know, including Howard Carter, including Lord Carnarvon, his daughter, Lady Evelyn. Like no one has ever adapted that story. And if you look at documentaries, it is really fascinating, like what happened. Like even if you obviously don't believe in Egyptian curses, it is interesting to see how it is that people mysterious, like people that were involved in the excavation, how they mysteriously died. It's crazy to me that nobody, like, of all the mummy movies that have been made, nobody has adapted that specific like the story that got all of it started. Yeah, they what's also interesting is how the whatever, well, not whatever, but the bats that were living down and had occupied the catacombs, how their excrement basically had fouled the air so badly that it was over a period of thousands of years that's the polluted air is believed to have been the cause of what made people die and expire. And that was who had opened the tomb, and that was what was the true cause allegedly behind the quote unquote curse of the pharaohs. Yeah, this is something that people don't get enough credit, or they don't give enough credit for to this movie, like how they were able to split the typical adventurer trope or stock character, so that Evie here is the explorer and O'Connell is the treasure hunter. I love that pop sound it makes as he's removing it. This part was also kind of freaky. I don't think such a thing as salt-based acid exists, but that's a rough way to go. Well, convenient that that didn't crush anybody. Yeah, which kind of makes you lucky that the Anuban statue didn't fall on you either. So I'm guessing these uh, not only does are we supposed to believe that this had preserved a a scarab for thousands of years, but it comes out of its shell fully grown. That freaked me out as a kid. That was creepy. I was like, what the hell, man? That was a good effect. Not gonna lie. This movie gets away with quite a bit considering its PG-13 rating. Now, what could he be on about? That was also kind of freaky. Like, not just the fact that he was eaten alive and eaten from the inside out, but that he had this thing had crawled into his brain. What? I don't know why, but this made for a funny jump scare. Not jump scare, but like Glenn Levitt. Oh, you drunk. Uh-oh, we've got company. This is also kind of interesting. A battle being fought above where like an ancient evil slumbers. What are you gonna do with a shotgun? Perfect time to crack one open. These two, as comedy characters, also play off of each other well. And again, like you can have two comedy characters like who we just saw. You can have two tough guy characters, and it's not like they are redundant. It's not as though they feel repetitive. And I think that's key to keep in mind. It's just another, boon or another feather in this movie's cap. What did I tell you? She got taken. She got taken out not by any of these invaders, but by the weapon that she herself was wielding. God. Yeah, like she lost so making her the generic tough girl in the sequel to this movie. She lost a lot of charm. I think that's one of the biggest parts. The vulnerability and the charm to her. She's very likable here. I like how he's trying to like keep her standing. Mm-hmm. And nighty night. Oh, what could have been. With each iteration, I think of a particular genre, I think it's important to be able to like expand on our knowledge of what the tropes have included or should include. Like one one very welcomed inclusion here was the presentation of the canopic jars as well as making them plot devices. I thought that this was very clever of the movie. Oh, we are brown and ignorant people. I laugh because that's how the extras are usually treated on these types of films. That's another thing. In addition to the canopic jars, later on you'll see they discover the Book of the Dead, and you didn't while this movie doesn't like specifically adapt an Egyptian story, it does include more trappings of Egyptian mythology that the original Mummy film did not, nor did any of these sequels after it. Oh my. Boy, I considering that cave in with his skull, those uh those scarabs must have gone to town. Damn. The dislocated jaw was a good was a nice touch. Oh, they find the book along with the canopic jars. So this Book of the Dead here, and later on the Book of Amun Ra, they're both made to look like, black stone and gold, respectively. Tablets bound together in a form resembling a codex, a modern day book. The ancient Egyptians would have written their books on papyrus scrolls. Even if they could make the books the way they're depicted, the Book of Amun Ra could never have been made out of pure gold. It would have just been, obscenely heavy. Yeah. So, you just heard the Americans mock O'Connell over discovering not just a juicy mummy, but saying that he could be dried out and used as firewood. In fact, many mummies were destroyed by ancient tomb robbers using them as such. Viewers who actually know something about ancient mummification practices, they'll know that Evie's claim that a red hot poker was used for brain extraction is incorrect, which suggests that she was amusing herself by intentionally trying to gross out Rick O'Connell with that description. Did you really have to sleep with a canopic jar, which you should know has a dead guy's organs? Well, it's probably dust by now, but you get it. And a heavy ass book. We are about to hit the 1 hour mark. In three, two, one. Another reminder, guys, no matter which platform you're watching this watch party on, if you could hit the like button, and if you are on YouTube, take to the chat so that you could vote in the totem poll what your film rating is. So here, as Evelyn reads the inscription, he who shall not be named, the hieroglyphs used are accurate. The inscription actually translates literally as the one without a name. Whoa. Interesting that everyone wakes at the same time. So this scene, this close-up scene during the locust swarm had to be reshot several times because the actor Jonathan Hyde, he couldn't keep a straight face with so many locusts crawling all over him. So while those locusts were mostly computer generated, a number of live grasshoppers were used for the shot. The grasshoppers were chilled in a refrigerator to make them more sluggish and easy to film. So obviously they had to descend back into the tomb because of the swarm of locusts. I've always thought that how can I put it? Like, to me, it would make sense if you had like an excavation team and at a particular dig site, and they have to recede into the tomb because there's an like they disrupt something that triggers a sandstorm on the surface, so now they have no choice but to seek shelter within the tomb. So what we just saw was pulled off by, obviously it was CGI, but the mound was used or was pulled off using an air compressor on the set that went off to simulate the insects emerging from the sand. I'm surprised they got away with this on a PG-13 rating. So the effects team that handled uh, Imhotep, they were told no gore when designing the look of the mummy. They actually did tests for, get this, grossness threshold. These effects sorry about that. Those effects with the mummy hold up very well. And I think it has to do with the meticulousness with which they were used. And here's the scene from Tremors 2. Just had to kill a brown one, right? Freaking piranhas. Anyway, as the effects team designed the mummy, they very much liked his transparency, so they removed his organs. So according to Steven Summers, the average special effect cost 125K per shot. $20 million of the film's budget was set aside for the elaborate special effects. That is admittedly funny. That effect holds up really well. It took 3 entire months for the animation supervisor to complete the musculature for Imhotep's body. Not anymore. I also very much like this part, how I always felt like mummies should regenerate, like, because, it doesn't really make sense for them to, if they're revived and they had decayed throughout time, it wouldn't make sense that they would remain, dried and hollow. And how can I put it? it would only make sense that the process would reverse. So I was happy that this movie included that. Because something similar happens with vampires, like that crappy Dracula 2000 movie. They had it where Dracula, who was played by Gerard Butler, would regenerate. That movie came out a year after this one. But I always felt that that should take place with mummies. Like they wouldn't stay, a shambling corpse. Man, this is all. this scene. This scene I also thought was interesting, even though it has never. What was it? There's like a contradiction between the Bible, Jewish and slavery by the pharaohs, and historical record, if I remember correctly. So I thought this part here was interesting, and that's what convinced Imhotep to spare him. Even though I'm pretty sure that the language Jews speak would have changed over 4,000 years, but just go with it. Now, where did he pull those out from, I wonder? That effect is it's still so good. Yeah, they got the hell out of Dodge. So to create the mummy, John Andrews Burton, he used a combination of live action and computer graphics. Then he matched the digital prosthetic makeup pieces of the actor who played Imhotep, his face. He used he created like a digital version of those makeup pieces during filming. So Burton said, when you see his film image, that's him. When he turns his head and half of his face is missing, and you can see right through onto his teeth, that's really his face, and that's why it's so hard to do. The actor that played Imhotep described filming as a whole new thing for him. He said, "quote They had to put these little red tracking lights all over my face so that they could map in the special effects. A lot of time I was walking around the set looking like a Christmas tree." Stupid. This unfortunately was this actor's last this was his last role before his passing. Bernard Fox. Well, he shouldn't have had his hands and tongue in the cookie jar. A mummified cookie jar. This was taken from the original 32 film. But I don't know, I kind of like that he's like just walking around like Darth Vader, you know what I mean? And in black, that's kind of cool. Oh boy. Imagine being told that. Oh, that's gross. They really went all out with this. Now, obviously, the plagues of Egypt have more to do with Bible Apocrypha as opposed to mummies, but its inclusion just also goes to show like how far we had come with blockbusters and special effects. Man, look at this. Look at how it doesn't look like unconvincing. And the fact that like parts of it are the actual actor, the movement and everything. That was really cool. So this is something that they just made up for the sake of this movie, like cats being the guardians of the Egyptian underworld. Like that's not a thing. Peculiar addition, though. This plot reveal I really liked. Like an Egyptian curator being part of the Magi, keeping tabs on anyone who would explore a little too close for comfort near Imhotep's tomb. How do you not love these characters? And like, man, isn't it crazy how we're lucky nowadays to get one good character in a horror movie or any movie, and like all of these characters are likable and relatable and memorable. And they do have some, veteran actors with this curator, with the elder statesman who was helping the American diggers. They really did get like have good use of the plagues, not just their obvious inclusion, but also the pacing, like when each happens. He's like, what is the argument here? Oops. Way ahead of you. I love how he just bullies everybody around. No, someone's on the run. I love how everybody has a fez here. Oh, strangers in the night. That was a good bit of direction. Like the close up on the eyes, the fact that he was so close to the camera, you couldn't see the approach of Imhotep, and then when he departs, you see Imhotep right behind him, and the eye movement, top marks for good direction there. So from the beginning, Stephen Summers didn't want a guy shuffling around in bandages, which is why motion capture was chosen so that Imhotep would move as a human and not a magical being. Um, I love how he he just tosses this guy around. Really? What the hell? What is that? A fan made of like cardboard or a boat propeller? I very much like the gradual progression of um, his regeneration. This was really well done. The pale skin, yeah. He himself releasing the next plague, just all well done. We're hitting the 1 hour 20 minute mark in 2-1 now. Guys, once again, if you could just hit the like button on whichever platform you're watching. And if you are watching on YouTube, may I direct your attention to the comments section. Be sure to vote in the totem poll as far as what you think of the movie. What is your film rating? If this is the first time you're watching The Mummy, or if you have seen it before, what your film rating is. This scene was very, very well handled. It's a jump scare, but it's a good one. And here, and they show you without showing you how it is that he absorbs and he materializes from the sand. They show you how it is that he absorbs his victims and how he's able to regenerate from them. And basically he leaves them as like desiccated husks, like a mummy. So the plastic dummies used as desiccated corpses in the film to represent the mummy's victims are the same as those used in the cult 1980s sci-fi film Life Force, which came out in 85. So one character even refers to the mummy sucking the life force out of people. He sniffs her. Oh yeah, we gonna get busy tonight. He's like, you bastard. Well, Evie, on the other hand, after kissing this thing and seeing what kissing him did to her did to his face.
Emotional damage.
And they managed to do that like instantly, despite no one finding this book for hundreds of years. So these zombified townspeople are it's a sly nod to the angry villagers in classic horror films. Not true. Last of the plagues was the plague of the firstborn, but this is a PG-13 movie. I think this movie started that whole trend of like monster movies where the jaw would open like unnaturally. You would see that in way too many other movies like I Am Legend or oh, The Exorcism of Emily Rose. I think I'll make a run for it valiantly. I also thought that in the sequel they missed an opportunity by not having more. I mean, they had more involvement of the Magi, but it would have been nicest to hear more of their origins. This is more of their origins as well as the inclusion of Bembridge scholars. That was wheezy. Shake your fist harder, boy. Whoops. Right about now, they're thinking, see what I mean about O'Connell? He bullies everybody. I love it. He just crushed that guy's foot for no damn reason. Ouch. What is it with the eye gouging in this movie? A dude took a candle to his eye. This guy that jumped the car just got a finger through his temple, and The first victim of the mummy got his eyes and tongue taken out. Yeah, you didn't have enough bullets there, Chief. And guess what? You're the last to get drained of your life force. I love how the sight of him is like so frightening. He drops his guns and can't believe what he's looking at. Gonna bomb. Oh my. Here you go. Oh my. That sounded gruesome. Honestly, what the hell was happening? Was the woman driving? Was it the woman? So, the scenes here showing the Cairo streets, they were shot, they were shots of a souk in Marrakesh that was so expansive that the actors and crew were warned not to wander too far from the set or risk getting lost. I forgot to mention before, during the filming of the scene in which the hail and the hail and fire fell onto Cairo, dried dog food was painted white and used as balls of hail thrown down on the set. He looks like King Xerxes from the movie 300, just without all that jewelry and guy liner. See how, see what I mean about, like, these aren't just interesting characters, but the way that they play off of each other is very well handled and acted. There's turtles down there. Well, I don't need to be told twice. Royal Air Force. Homeboy's just chilling there. Is he playing Spanish music? Why not, old chap? I wish we got to see more of this guy throughout the movie. Just a little bit more. Is there a need for him for either of them to be on the wings of the plane? I thought that this effect was also well handled. And it is interesting how they tie, the movement of the mummy to the sand itself. You saw this in the previous scene where the sand blew into the American's room, and the sand itself lifted him up. You saw the shadow of the man get completely drained of life, and then after that, the corpse is tossed aside, and you see Imhotep appear from the sand. So during this scene, as Imhotep is raising the sandstorm in the desert, the camera had to quickly pan up because the wind machines being used kept blowing his cape up, exposing his backside. And this right here is an iconic scene, without question. And it's so simple, you know what I mean? Like giving a personification for the sandstorm. That way it's not just sand sand hitting the plane. I think that villains should have like a minion, and Benny plays that role perfectly. This drunk fool just has a freaking death wish. Oopsie. Boy, good thing that these two were tucked safely away on the wings of the plane that just crashed. Like I said, it would have been good if you got a little bit more from the Winston character. That way, this sacrifice would have meant just a little bit more. A noble death. If they're not gonna make more mummy movies, they should explore these in video games. I'm always convinced that, what isn't or hasn't been done well with movies should always be explored in video games. I'm a very firm believer in that medium, in that philosophy for that medium. So, production designer Alan Cameron, he found a dormant volcano near Urfaud, where the entire set for Hamunaptera could be constructed. The director, Stephen Sommers, liked the location because, quote, a city hidden in the crater of an extinct volcano made perfect sense. Out in the middle of the desert, you would never see it. You would never think of entering the crater unless you knew what else was inside that volcano. End quote. This was a good callback. I love how instead of stepping on it or putting a torch to it, nah, that's not good. That insect from hell deserves a bullet. I thought that this was also very creative as well, how the mummies came out from the hieroglyphs. Or, were the hieroglyphs themselves. I thought that that was very creative. Like I was saying, so a survey of the volcano was conducted so that an accurate model and scale models of the columns and statues could be replicated back at Shepperton Studios, where all the scenes involving what we're seeing now, the underground passageways of the City of the Dead, were shot. So the sets took 16 weeks to build and included fiberglass columns rigged with special effects for the movie's final scenes. Another large set was constructed in the UK on the dockyard at Chatham, which doubled as the Giza port on the River Nile. So this was 600 feet in length and featured a steam train, an Ajax traction engine, three cranes, an open two-horse carriage, four horse-drawn carts, five dressing horses and grooms, nine packed donkeys and mules, as well as market stalls, Arab-clad vendors, and room for 300 costumed extras. So while filming, John Hannah, he had sprained his wrist and had to wear a brace on it, which is why you see why this shows up during the final scenes. So we just hit the hour 40-minute mark. Again, guys, if you can hit the like button on whichever platform you're watching. If it happens to be on YouTube, you're pulling double duty. So I ask that you hit the like button as well as vote in the totem poll what your film rating is. so, so while the film made extensive use of computer generated imagery, many scenes, including the ones where you just saw where Evelyn is covered with rats and locusts, those were real using live animals. You gotta love how by the time they got to the end, they were like, you know what, the damsel in distress, let's use the real thing. She could handle it. So in this scene, Benny is shown with trying to move the camels, and he pulls the camel by the reins, but it doesn't budge. The camels all, for some reason, they hated Kevin J. O'Connor, who plays Benny. So a mix of both lion and bear roars were used for the yells and screams of Imhotep and the soldier mummies during this climax. Well, they are undead, fella. God, I really hope that they use like prosthetics for his teeth because oh my god. And I'm not even talking about the grit in between, although that is noticeable, but like the yellowing of it. Dear Lord. Homeboy is unloading. He's like, well, let God sort him out. That wasn't really necessary. Plus, don't you have a sword? He's like, get out, and then he throws a stick of dynamite. He's like, I didn't say that. He's like, bruh, I was gonna hold them all for you, but that doesn't mean you kill me in the process. Stupid. Yep, here we go, round 2. This effect also is very convincing. It looks like a shadowy liquid, I don't know, gown or veil. It doesn't look fake. She's like, oh my god. She's like, no, I wasn't expecting this. Give me my skin back at least. Director Steven Sommers described his vision of the film as a kind of Indiana Jones or Jason and the Argonauts from 1963, with the mummy as the creature giving the hero a hard time. Interestingly, British chat show host Jonathan Ross described the film as Raiders of the Lost Ark meets the Terminator. And you'll see a reference once the mummies begin attacking to, oh, it's right here, of Jason and the Argonauts. I love that. Even with motion capture, I can only imagine how hard it was to film all that choreography. This gag is really good. He's like, might as well. And, you know, along with the use of CGI, it is also admirable that they mix in practical effects with the mummies. It's it's wild to me that it's such a lost art to incorporate both CGI and practical effects. This was a nice touch, not just mummies, but mummies of the Magi. I love how she calls him idiot. You had a knife, and instead of stabbing her, you just sneak up on her. He's like, ah, this is all going swimmingly. Oops. Thanks for stopping by. The hook sword, the scythes were also accurate because that was the weapon that was used in ancient Egypt. Oh yes. And it's interesting that this film cast two Oscar winners, Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz. Uh-oh. Someone go get it. And she go get got. She's like, oh god, not again. Oh, Jesus. Talk about going right for the gut. He's like, what do I have to do to get rid of you? No problem at all. Imhotep's first appearance since The Mummy, 1932, or I should say this was his first appearance since that first film. The Mummy films were unique among the Universal Classic Monster series and the Hammer film remakes in that the sequels had nothing to do with the original. They would feature another mummy named Karis, who is resurrected by tana leaves to be controlled by a modern person similar to a voodoo zombie, and popularized the idea of a shambling mummy still in its wrappings. Give him a hug. Oh, why? Oh, gotta hold in your guts. It's PG-13 after all. That was surprisingly well executed. That effect. Little too greedy there, wasn't you? I forgot that he was the one that. Yep, here we go. And not only does he trigger it, he triggers it with the gold that he was seeking. I think that this was the first Mummy movie also to have like booby traps, which were typically well done, which was typically reserved for like haunted house gothic films as opposed to anything involving Egyptian pyramids. In that aspect, you could also say that they took influence from the Indiana Jones movies, but still, it is applicable. I'm gonna take a swig. Oh, no way out. Don't worry your head, though. You'll have plenty of company to keep you safe and warm and hollow. I hadn't realized this until I watched this movie, but he suffers the fate that his benefactor did, but this is his end, whereas this happened to Imhotep at the beginning of the movie. Yikes, that sound. So how interesting that the collapsing bookshelves in the library at the beginning of the film set up the destruction of Hamunaptra at the end, especially the falling pillars. Thanks, Dick. Yeah, sure. I'll get right on that. Forgetting that he's at least alive. Aww. See, it's a romance after all. See? Hero rides off on horseback. He gets the girl and the gold. And that's our movie. Give me one sec, guys. My stomach has been acting up all day, but stay tuned because I will be right back. But I do have closing thoughts, some bit of last minute trivia, and then obviously my outro. So I'll be right back.
his watch has ended.
And now their watch is ended.
Okay, sorry about that delay. I was just had to take care of something, and my guts were coming out. Anyway, so just some last minute trivia regarding The Mummy, which we just saw. How funny that in the 1990 The Mummy, Brendan Fraser plays a character that is part of a group that accidentally brings an evil mummy back to life. Contrarily, at the beginning of the same decade, in 92, the film Encino Man, Brendan Fraser made his acting lead debut as a good-hearted caveman who was accidentally brought back to life. Shockingly, in the mid-2000s, Fraser's career died for nearly a decade, but recently his career has been brought back to life in what fans are calling the Renaissance. Very clever. Interestingly enough, The Mummy, 1999, is credited with establishing the first weekend of May as the start of the summer season for Hollywood blockbusters. So this trend was further cemented by Gladiator 2000, Spider-Man 2002, and the MCU, which had released a film on that weekend nearly every year since Iron Man 2008. So according to director Stephen Sommers, Universal phoned him the morning after the first Mummy was released, and they said to him, "We need another one." So here's the part of the watch party where I give my closing thoughts on what we just saw. So to me, what started with Bram Stoker's Dracula at the beginning of the decade ended with The Mummy. Anybody who has ever mocked Brendan Fraser in this role, saying that they couldn't take him seriously because of his comedic typecasting in previous films, shut the hell up. Get some damn taste, and you have my express permission to grow up. This was the same nonsense I heard about Adrian Brody in Predators. If it's a convincing act, if it's a convincing role, and the actor is believable in the performance, what's your beef exactly? You're poo-pooing men who got in shape and played tough guys to persuade you into buying into them as the role that they were cast in. You're not asking the impossible of people, like persuading them to think that Taylor Swift is attractive or talented or not annoying. Look, the point is that Fraser utterly crushed in this role, to the point that the whole damn series is known as the Brendan Fraser trilogy. Again, as I mentioned at the top of the watch party, do I wish that this leaned more into horror than comedy? Sure. But if we're going to get a retelling of the Mummy story, I'm thrilled with what we got. Because you can't watch a past classic without people jamming their insert current year politics, no, this movie is not racist. The same people complaining about the Egyptian jailer's stereotypical portrayal today, please believe that they were laughing their asses off along with the rest of us when this movie came out. They're just pretending to be upset about it now to virtue signal. Ain't that right, honest trailers? Furthermore, how do you have a problem with the Egyptian jailer because of representation, yet conveniently neglect the Magi? Oopsie. Take in all that sweet hypocrisy. Furthermore, if you're bent out of shape that the high priest is portrayed as or is played as by a white guy, okay, then the movie's about one white guy killing another. There, wrap your liberal politics around that one, snowflakes. This movie is the best movie in the Mummy, any Mummy film. And it's funny to me that virtue signaling little pubes like Doug Walker like to pretend that the original 1932 version's legacy was disgraced by the 1999 remake. You know what's a disgrace, you talentless hack? That the 1932 movie is a ripoff of the 1931 Dracula movie. Oops! I really like the Benny character. I love cowardly characters, not just for comedic effect, but as we saw in this film, they really do make other characters look better by comparison, elevating both your hero and villain. One closing piece of trivia. In 2004, the Universal Studios theme park, both in Hollywood and Orlando, they opened their Revenge of the Mummy rides based on both this movie and the Mummy Returns sequel. The ride became so popular that lines would stretch into the main park with riders waiting for hours in the hot California or Florida sun. To alleviate the stress of waiting, when the lines would finally begin moving, fans of the movie would wearily chant Imhotep, Imhotep, as the hypnotized townspeople do halfway through the movie. Now, what I'm about to mention might sound like a curveball, but I ask that you keep an open mind and you stick with me. I very much am a fan of mummy fiction and mummy movie. Well, I'm an enthusiast of mummy films. I wouldn't say a fan just because a lot of them aren't good, but to me, these movies, or the concept of mummies returning from the grave, they have a lot in common with the Hellraiser movies. Hear me out. Both have usage of puzzle boxes. Both incorporate high priests. They both involve reviving corpses. Both franchises and film concepts, they include horrors inflicted upon humans, whether through curses, hellish torture, or desiccation. Both use a form of a Pandora's box, whether through Le Marchand's toy box or reading from the Book of the Dead. Both include an underworld, whether the Egyptian afterlife or the Labyrinth of Leviathan. And to me, Hellraiser was always, or should be, the film that mummy movies are jealous of, just because they not only do they have all of those same ingredients, but man, they really deliver on each of these tropes in really frightening ways. For instance, think about how the uncle in the first Hellraiser movie, returns from the grave, just reforming as a corpse in the attic. And you know, the other tropes that I mentioned, I'm telling you, these two movie monsters and films, they have much more in common than people would realize upon face value. And the Hellraiser films, just within the context of those key ingredients that I mentioned, anyone who would want to legitimately do a mummy film, they would be wise to take cues from the Hellraiser movies. So, let me get the obvious out of the way. To relegate the 1999 Mummy film as a mere comedy movie or Indiana Jones knockoff is to dismiss everything that this film got right. The story, the effects, both practical and CGI, the quirky, over-the-top, colorful characters, the inclusion of the canopic jars as MacGuffins, the inclusion of the Egyptian plagues, the casting, the scenery of the Lost City and the underground catacombs, the special effects of a believable walking corpse, the menacing portrayals of the scarabs, the involvement of the Magi, the booby traps of the pyramid, the Book of the Dead, Imhotep, not only regenerating as the film went on, but gradually growing back flesh, bone, and skin by targeting the trespassers that stole his organ jars. The digital effects here pushed the envelope of what was started with Jurassic Park. Not only that, the blockbuster effects with the Egyptian plague and the sand wall, they just go to show how far cinema had come. And this film deserves credit for that. The curse, the canopic jars, the plagues of Egypt, the villain regeneration, all that is tied together. Like, give this film its due. I would like to close out with 2 trivia points. Well, actually, no, a couple different trivia points. The novelization gives some details that probably would have been difficult to convey in the movie, such as some of the Carnahan's backstory, the brother and the sister, and the cause and effect of their parents' deaths. So, among other things, pouring the scarabs into Imhotep's sarcophagus wasn't just to torture him further, it's an essential part of the ritual that they would eat his flesh, and when he became desperate, he would eat them, and this would continue for years. This dark mockery of the cycle of life was an important aspect of making him immortal, so that he would suffer forever. There was a lot more detail in the original script that was cut for pacing, including an expansion of Imhotep's backstory, the rest of the plagues, and tidbit explanations of minor issues. The original script and the movie novelization provide an explanation as to why Imhotep's corpse is still juicy after thousands of years. As mentioned, the scarabs thrown into the sarcophagus were considered sacred, and by eating them, Imhotep is condemned to live forever. Likewise, the high priest Imhotep is considered a sacred man, and by eating him, the scarabs are condemned to live forever. The intention is that both the scarabs and Imhotep would be condemned to eternal life, eating each other forever. This next section I refer to as the casting call. So, Rachel Weisz was the only actress offered her specific part. Leonardo DiCaprio was rumored to have been offered the role of Rick O'Connell. It's believed that DiCaprio was said to have loved the script and wanted to be in the film. However, he had already agreed to star in The Beach 2000. It's also been said that DiCaprio asked if The Beach could be delayed so he could film The Mummy, but producers refused. However, filming of The Beach was delayed anyway. Go figure. Stephen Dunham auditioned for the role of Rick O'Connell. He was rejected, but Stephen Sommers liked his acting so much that he made the character Mr. Henderson just for him. At one point, Bruce Campbell and Kurt Russell were considered for the role of Rick O'Connell. Before Brendan Fraser, the role of Rick O'Connell was also offered to Sylvester Stallone. Could you imagine? Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt, Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, Chris O'Donnell, and Matthew McConaughey were considered for the role of Rick O'Connell, and Tom Cruise would later star in the lead in the reboot, The Mummy 2017. The less said about that debacle, the better. Moving on. Director's chair. When Clive Barker was attached to the project, the film was intended to be a low-budget horror film. Barker's vision for the film was violent, with the story revolving around the head of a contemporary art museum who turns out to be a cultist trying to reanimate mummies. George A. Romero was brought in with a vision of a zombie-style horror movie similar to Night of the Dead, but this was considered too scary. Sam Raimi was considered for directing the film as well. Joe Dante's version would have cast Daniel Day-Lewis as the Mummy. This version, which was co-written by John Sayles, was set in contemporary times and focused on reincarnation with elements of a love story. It came close to being made, with some elements like the flesh-eating scarabs making it to the final product. However, at that point, the studio wanted a film with a budget of $15 million and rejected Dante's version. Heading back to George Romero's version, his vision, as mentioned, was a zombie-style horror movie similar to Night of the Living Dead, but which also relied heavily upon elements of tragic romance and ambivalence of identity. Romero completed a draft in October of '94, co-written by Alan Ormsby and John Sayles, that revolved around female archaeologist Heaven Grover and her discovery in Abydos of the tomb of Imhotep, an Egyptian general who lived in the time of Ramesses II. So, unfolding in a nameless American city in modern times, events are set in motion when Imhotep inadvertently wakes as a result of his preserved cadaver having been exposed to rays from an MRI scan in a high-tech forensic archaeology lab. The script then progresses to a fish-out-of-water story when Imhotep, having regained his youthful appearance, recognizes the need to adapt to a contemporary society that is 3,000 years removed from when he came from. So, assuming at first that he is a representative from the Bureau of Antiquities, Helen finds herself drawn into a tentative relationship with Imhotep, while also experiencing clairvoyant flashbacks to a previous life in 19th dynasty Egypt as a priestess of Isis. Summoning mystical powers through incantation, Imhotep later resurrects the mummy of Charis, a loyal slave whose body had been resting alongside his master's in the same tomb, but is now held in the local museum. After escaping in the city sewer system, Charis embarks on a vengeful rampage against the various criminal fences and high society antiquarians who had acquired stolen relics from his tomb. So, Romero's script was considered too dark and violent by James Jacks and the studio, who wanted a more accessible picture. Compounding the issue was the fact that Romero was unable to extricate from a contract for a different film project he had in negotiation at the time with MGM. And so, his involvement with the film was severed, and the development of an entirely new script was commissioned to other writers. Interestingly enough, I had read up on Clive Barker's adaptation. He did it along with Nick Garris, who wrote the script. Seemingly, all these other directors, especially Clive Barker, were trying to think outside the box. Lo and behold, all along, it turns out that Universal Studios was indeed was looking for something that was more cliched. Go figure. The studio's trying to... I mean, look, I'm happy with what we got in The Mummy 1999, but go figure that the studios would focus on doing something that's more familiar and was more tropish than something unique. So, here is the part where I like to do recommendations of other films based on what we've already seen. So, why not make it a shockbuster night?
There's a formula to it. A very simple formula.
Make it a blockbuster, right?
So, I would like to recommend movies that are similar in tone to this. First up would be Army of Darkness, another dark fantasy film. And how appropriate, since Bruce Campbell had previously been considered for the role. A different horror comedy or horror film that with levity to it would be Sleepy Hollow. I believe it came out in the same year, 1999. And lastly, I would go with Deep Rising, made by the same director. So, if you like this watch party, like the video and share it with your friends. If you hated it, subscribe to my channel and share it with your enemies. So, what is on scene for the sake of the Mind's Eye Theater, Mind's Eye Radio, and Mind Games? I had a very busy week. This past Monday, I did the Chapter 4 narration of Alice Asylum, the game plot directly from the Design Bible. I didn't get to do anything on Tuesday. I was caught up at work. Wednesday, I did my second playthrough of the game Perish. I also uploaded on Tuesday. I did get I did get to do something on Tuesday. I uploaded a playthrough, composite of my clips of week 1 of the game Perish. Very entertaining. I felt. Today obviously was my 25th anniversary watch party of The Mummy. Tomorrow will be my 45-year anniversary watch party of the film Alien. So you be sure to return to the watch party for that. Now, in terms of coming attractions, Hotness TV Magazine May edition will release next Wednesday. Yes, Wednesday. It will most likely be my recommendations for a summer horror watch list of movies for you to watch. In addition to that, I do ask that you join me on Monday. I will be doing my 5th and final narration of the game plot for Alice Asylum. Tuesday, I will return to my regularly scheduled date and time of the live stream. That'll be my 3rd and final playthrough of the game Perish. Let's see. Wednesday, I am going to drop my video for the fantasy booking that I would have done for Bray Wyatt. Next Thursday, I don't believe I have anything, but between now and then, who knows? And then on... actually, I do know what I'll be doing. Next Thursday, I will be giving my thoughts on the next 3 years worth of Halloween releases that will be coming out. There have been, I believe, 5 full films that are scheduled for release Halloween 2024 all the way up to Halloween 2026. So that will be on Thursday. And then Friday will be my impressions of the movie Baghead, which I did a a watch party of 3 weeks ago now. So you have everything you need. What's on the scene as far as coming attractions from yours truly. Again, be sure to check back with the watch party tomorrow. I'll be doing my 45-year anniversary watch party for the movie Alien. Therefore, mark your calendars and say your prayers. I've been Inkarnate, offering a word of caution. Fear the worst, so long you recognize who's best.
If you're resigned to your fate, time to subscribe to your fears.
Warn your friends. Warn everyone.